What does it feel like to watch your team suffocate in slow motion, week after week, drive after drive, third down after third down? That's the question haunting every Atlanta Falcons fan right now as we dissect the wreckage of yet another soul-crushing defeat. This isn't just about losing anymore. This is about systematic failure, predictable mediocrity, and a coaching staff that seems allergic to innovation. The numbers don't lie, the eye test doesn't lie, and frankly, the Vegas odds makers don't lie either. Raheem Morris is sitting at minus 200 to be the next NFL head coach fired. And honestly, that's the most accurate prediction we've seen all season. Welcome to an exclusive deep dive into the Atlanta Falcons' organizational dysfunction, where we'll expose the third down nightmare that's killing this offense. Examine why Kyle Pitts' future in Atlanta is hanging by a thread, and reveal why the inevitable coaching purge might actually be the best thing to happen to this franchise in years. Buckle up, this is going to sting. Let's start with the elephant in the room, or should I say the coach on the hot seat. CBS Sports just dropped their latest head coach firing odds, and Raheem Morris sits atop that inglorious list at minus 200. For context, that means if you bet $200 on Morris being the next coach fired, you'd only win $100. The bookmakers are that confident this is happening. Following Morris on this death march are Zach Taylor, Jonathan Gannon, Kevin Stefanski, and Pete Carroll. Now, here's what's fascinating about this list. Carroll is only in year one with Seattle, while Stefanski and Taylor have significantly more tenure. Morris and Gannon represent the modern coaches, second or third year guys who simply haven't delivered winning records and are drowning in quarterback controversies. Gannon is 0-4-1 with Kyler Murray. Morris? He might be 0-4-2 with Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix Jr. That's not a coaching resume, that's a coaching obituary. CBS Sports pulled no punches in their analysis. Morris is in somewhat of a similar boat with Jonathan Gannon, third-year coaches who have yet to produce a winning record and have significant quarterback issues. They continued, highlighting the catastrophic decision-making that's plagued Morris throughout his tenure. Game management blunders, clock mismanagement, baffling fourth-down decisions. The list goes on and on. But here's the kicker that should infuriate every Falcons fan. ESPN's Dan Graziano reports that Morris is a personal favorite of Arthur Blank. There it is. The real reason Morris is still employed. Not because he's earned it, not because the team is winning, but because of personal relationships and organizational politics. Since the beginning of 2024, Morris's record stands at a pathetic 12-17. 12 wins, 17 losses, and somehow he's still cashing paychecks in Flowery Branch. The Falcons have been blown out only twice this season, once by the Carolina Panthers in Week 3, and then by the Miami Dolphins. Yet despite avoiding blowouts, they've mastered the art of finding creative new ways to lose every single week. Here's what makes the Raheem Morris era so maddening. This roster isn't devoid of talent. Far from it. Drake London, Bijan Robinson, Darnell Mooney, Kyle Pitts, Jesse Bates, A.J. Terrell, Michael Penix Jr., who many believe is the franchise quarterback of the future. This isn't a barren wasteland of talent. This is a roster that should be competing for playoff spots, not fighting for draft position. Yet here we are, all this talent, all these playmakers, all these high draft picks and free agent investments. And what do we have to show for it? A coaching staff that can't scheme players open. An offensive coordinator whose predictability makes high school defenses look sophisticated. A head coach whose game management makes you long for the days of... Well, actually, let's not go there. The talent is there. The coaching is not. That's the simplest way to frame this disaster. When you have this much offensive firepower and you're ranked 29th in third down conversion rate, that's not a player problem. That's a coaching indictment of the highest order. Now, let's talk about Kyle Pitts, because his situation perfectly encapsulates everything wrong with this organization's decision-making over the past few years. Against the New York Jets, Pitts had arguably his best game of the season. He looked engaged, athletic, and like the player the Falcons thought they were drafting 4th overall in 2021. But here's the brutal reality. One good game doesn't erase 3+ years of inconsistency and underperformance. Pitts is the most bipolar player in the NFL. One week he's spectacular. The next week he's invisible. The following week he has 1 reception for 9 yards, and you forget he's even on the roster. He's putting up decent yardage numbers this season, but he still hasn't found the end zone. For a player of his caliber and draft pedigree, that's simply unacceptable. According to Falcons Sports Illustrated, Pitts is expected to command approximately 3 years and $36 million in free agency. That's $12 million per year. And here's the million-dollar question, or should I say, the $36 million question: is Kyle Pitts worth that kind of investment for Falcons team with holes all over the roster? The answer, quite frankly, is no. Pitts hasn't shown enough consistency to warrant being one of the top 10 highest-paid tight ends in the league. At $12 million per year with incentives, he'd likely slot somewhere between 5th and 9th at his position. If another team wants to pay him that money, they're welcome to it. But for a Falcons franchise that needs to rebuild from the ground up, that's not a wise allocation of resources. Here's the financial reality that should excite Falcons fans looking toward the future. If Atlanta moves on from both Kirk Cousins and Kyle Pitts, they'd save approximately $46 million against the 2026 salary cap. $46 million. Think about what you could do with that kind of financial flexibility. Think about the free agents you could sign, the short-term rentals you could bring in, the long-term extensions you could offer to players who actually deserve them. That's not even accounting for other potential cap casualties like Arnold Ebiketie or David Onyemata. The point is this: the Falcons have an opportunity to completely reset their financial situation and build something sustainable. But it requires making tough decisions and not getting sentimental about players who haven't earned long-term commitments. Now we arrive at the heart of the matter, the single biggest issue plaguing the Atlanta Falcons offense: 3rd down conversion rate. Against the Jets, the Falcons punted on their first 4 offensive possessions. For straight 3-and-outs to start the game, they finished the contest converting just 4 of 12 third downs, a 33% conversion rate. Want to know what's truly depressing? That 33% is exactly their season average, which ranks 29th in the NFL. 29th. Out of 32 teams. Only 3 teams in the entire league are worse at moving the chains than the Atlanta Falcons. This isn't a small problem. This isn't a minor issue that can be fixed with a few adjustments. This is a fundamental systematic failure that exposes everything wrong with Zach Robinson's offensive scheme. When you can't convert 3rd downs, you can't sustain drives. When you can't sustain drives, your defense is constantly on the field. When your defense is constantly on the field, they get exhausted and give up points. It's a vicious cycle that's been playing out week after week. But it gets worse. Let's talk about what modern NFL offenses do to set up young quarterbacks for success. They scheme players open in the middle of the field. They create easy completions. They design plays that give quarterbacks high-percentage throws to keep drives alive. The Atlanta Falcons do none of this. According to EPA, expected points added versus frequency data, the Falcons not only throw over the middle of the field at one of the lowest rates in the NFL, they're also terrible at it when they do. Look at successful offenses like the Detroit Lions, the Cincinnati Bengals, or the San Francisco 49ers. They attack the middle of the field aggressively and frequently. They stretch defenses vertically. They create explosive plays. Zach Robinson's offense? It's dink and dunk. It's at the line of scrimmage. It's gimmicky college concepts that don't translate to the NFL level. Even the struggling New York Giants take more shots down the middle of the field than Atlanta does. That's not just bad. That's organizational malpractice. Here's the good news. And yes, there is actually some good news buried in this disaster. NFL rebuilds don't take 4 or 5 years anymore. Look at the Chicago Bears. Just last season, they finished 5-12. This year, they're the #1 seed in the NFC. One offseason, one coaching change, one quarterback decision, That's all it took to go from bottom feeder to Super Bowl contender. The modern NFL is built for quick turnarounds if you make the right decisions. The salary cap structure, the draft system, the prevalence of rookie quarterback contracts, all of it creates opportunities for smart organizations to rebuild rapidly. The Falcons have the foundational pieces. They have young talent on both sides of the ball. They have draft capital. They'll have significant salary cap space if they make the tough decisions. What they need is competent coaching and a coherent organizational vision. That starts with cleaning house. Raheem Morris needs to go. Zach Robinson needs to go. The entire coaching staff needs to be evaluated with ruthless objectivity. Arthur Blank needs to set aside personal relationships and make decisions based solely on what's best for winning football games. So, what does the path forward actually look like for the Atlanta Falcons? First, accept reality. This coaching staff isn't going to suddenly figure it out. Raheem Morris has had nearly 2 full seasons to prove he can lead this team, and the results speak for themselves. The minus 200 odds on him being the next coach fired aren't disrespectful, they're accurate. Second, commit to Michael Penix Jr. as the franchise quarterback and build everything around him. That means hiring an offensive coordinator who can actually scheme players open and design a modern passing attack. It means surrounding him with weapons who fit the system. It means protecting him with a competent offensive line. Third, make the tough financial decisions. Moving on from Kirk Cousins' contract is inevitable at this point. Letting Kyle Pitts test free agency and collecting a compensatory pick in 2027 makes sense. Evaluating every veteran contract and determining who fits the long-term vision is essential. Fourth, nail the 2025 draft. The Falcons will likely have a top 10 pick. They need to hit on that selection. Whether it's an offensive lineman, a pass rusher, or a playmaker on either side of the ball, that pick needs to be a building block for the next 5 years. Fifth, hire a head coach with a proven track record of developing young quarterbacks and building sustainable winning cultures. This isn't the time for another up-and-coming coordinator who's never been a head coach before. This is the time for someone who's been there, done that, and knows how to win in this league. As painful as this season has been, there's actually a silver lining to all this dysfunction. Clarity. The Falcons now know exactly what they have in Raheem Morris, a nice guy who's in over his head as a head coach. They know what they have in Zach Robinson, an offensive coordinator whose scheme doesn't work at the NFL level. They know what they have in Kirk Cousins, an aging veteran who can't carry a team anymore. That clarity, as brutal as it is to acquire, is valuable. It means the organization can move forward with confidence in their decisions. There's no more what if or maybe next year. The answers are in. The experiment failed. Now it's time to move on. The talent on this roster is real. Bijan Robinson is a special player. Drake London is a legitimate number 1 receiver. The defense has pieces worth building around. Michael Penix Jr. showed flashes that suggest he could be the answer at quarterback. But talent without coaching is just wasted potential. And that's exactly what we're watching in Atlanta right now, a roster full of potential being squandered by a coaching staff that's simply not good enough. So we return to that opening question. What does it feel like to watch your team suffocate in slow motion? For Falcons fans, it feels like frustration. It feels like wasted Sundays. It feels like watching the same mistakes repeated over and over while the coaching staff seems incapable of learning or adapting. But here's what it shouldn't feel like: hopeless. The Chicago Bears proved that turnarounds can happen quickly in today's NFL. The Houston Texans went from laughingstock to playoff contender in 1 season. The Falcons have the resources, the draft capital, and the foundational talent to do the same thing. What they need is leadership willing to make the hard decisions. Arthur Blank needs to stop protecting his personal favorites and start demanding results. Terry Fontenot needs to be held accountable for the roster construction and coaching hires. The entire organization needs to be evaluated with cold, hard objectivity. Raheem Morris will be fired. That's not speculation, that's inevitability. The only question is whether it happens in the next few weeks or at the end of the season. Either way, his tenure in Atlanta is over. Zach Robinson's time as offensive coordinator is also finished. The third down numbers alone are a fireable offense. The 2025 offseason will define the next era of Atlanta Falcons football. Will they make the tough decisions and commit to a real rebuild? Or will they make half measures and try to patch together another mediocre roster? For the sake of every long-suffering Falcons fan, let's hope they choose the former. Because this current path leads nowhere except more disappointment, more creative ways to lose, and more Monday mornings wondering how a team with this much talent can be this bad. The rebuild is coming. The coaching purge is inevitable. The only question now is whether the Falcons will embrace it and do it right, or whether they'll drag this out and waste another year of their young players' careers. What do you think the Falcons should do this offseason? Should they clean house completely or try to salvage parts of the current regime? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear from every frustrated Falcons fan out there. And if you found this deep dive valuable, smash that like button and let me know you want more hard-hitting analysis like this. The truth hurts, but it's the only way forward. Rise up, Falcons fans. Better days are coming. But only if the organization has the courage to make them happen.